Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective Podcast.
Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective. I'm Mark Billingsley, Chairman of the Shelby County Board of Commissioners, and today we're going to have a really good show. Linda Phillips, who is the Administrator of Elections here in Shelby County, is going to join us today. Linda, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about lots of things. We're going to talk about the history of elections in Shelby County. We're going to talk about some upcoming elections, and we're also going to talk about voter machines, something that lots of people are talking about. So we'll be right back on the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Jazz, America's own original musical art form. When did it start? Who were and are some of the major players? How do you distinguish what kind of jazz you're listening to? We talk about the great and lesser-known artists, songs and tunes, the instruments, and the social impact jazz has had on world culture since its beginning at the start of the 20th century.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Welcome back to the Chairman's Perspective. We're going to have a great show today. I'm Mark Billingsley, Chairman of the Shelby County Board of Commissioners, and today I'm really honored to have a friend in with us today, Shelby County Administrator of Elections, Linda Phillips. To tell you just a little bit about Linda, she began her tenure as Administrative Leader of the Shelby County Election Commission in May of 2016 when she relocated from Lafayette, Indiana. She's been a lifelong voter and has never missed an election. She believes that voting is the most important thing anyone can do because of their fundamental rights as Americans. So again, it's such a pleasure to have Linda with us today. We'll tell you more about her background. She is very experienced. She's been really working in elections her entire career for over 30 years. From the time she was a poll worker in Tippecanoe County in Indiana. Did I say that right, Linda?
That's right.
Up until today, where we are in the midst of some upcoming and very important elections. So again, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Linda, again, I've barely hit on your resume, but you're highly qualified to be our Administrator of Elections. I know this is a heavy, busy time for us in Shelby County. In 2020, I understand we'll have 3 elections. We'll have the presidential preference primary and county primary in March, and then we'll have the county general and state and federal primary in August of 2020, and then we'll have the general elections in November 3rd of 2020. How many staff do you have that work on this? I heard today from you that you had an enormous amount of people that are registering to prepare for the upcoming elections. But tell me a little bit about your position and the team that supports you.
Well, I have a wonderful team, and we couldn't do it without them. We have 17 full-time employees that work year-round, and then we bring in between 40 and 80 temporary employees, depending upon the election. We'll employ 214 people for early voting, and then on Election Day, we'll have anywhere between 1,200 and 1,600 poll workers. So it's a big operation, and it takes a lot of people to pull this off.
You know, it's a big election for a fairly small staff. I know over the years that we've struggled to get poll workers. Is that a challenge now, or do you need people to apply to be a poll worker?
Well, it is always a challenge to get enough poll workers, particularly Republicans. State law requires a balance of poll workers between the parties at the polling locations, and it's sometimes hard to get Republicans in some areas, and it's sometimes hard to get Democrats in some areas.
Wow. Is it right that you only have to be 17 years old and a resident of Shelby County to be a poll worker, or must you be 18 years old?
Well, we do hire high school students. If high school students are interested, we actually appreciate high school students' energy.
That's great. So they can apply, and
they can go to shelbyvote.com, and under the poll workers tab, they'll find an application.
And there's so much information on your website. So if I'm interested in really honestly anything elections, going back to the history of our elections, to being a poll worker, to getting respective dates, what's the website address for that?
shelbyvote.com, SHELBYVOTE.com. And yes, there is a lot of information on there.
I was really surprised earlier today, before we got on the show, I wanted to be a little bit prepared. And I read that our very first recorded election in Shelby County occurred in April of 1827. And the voting occurred at the courthouse on paper ballots where actually constituents wrote out the name of who they wanted in that election.
Yeah, pre-printed ballots weren't a thing until after the turn of the century.
That is amazing. And then in the early 1900s, pre-printed ballots were first used. Votes were tallied at the courthouse.
That's right.
And then in 1950, many were calling for Shelby County to use some sort of mechanical voting machines, as it took nearly 40 hours to tabulate the previous results. Have we? Tell me, Linda, that we've come a lot farther than the 40 hours it took to tabulate the votes in the past.
Oh, yes, we've definitely come much farther. But there are people that want to know at 7:01 all of the results in Shelby County, and our polls close at 7. So just be patient. We'll do them as fast as we can.
Well, in 1986, the county purchased new voting machines, which were the first electronic devices. That's hard to imagine because that's around the time I graduated from high school, which it's been a while, but wasn't that long ago. And then in 1998, we went to touch screens recorded, which people call them the DRE machines, and we purchased those for early voting. And now it sounds like Shelby County, the County Board of Commissioners and the Election Commission is looking at a new opportunity for people to vote. And so can you share with the audience why it's important that we invest in new voter machines?
Well, our current machines are at the end of their lifespan. They've been great machines. They're accurate, but they are at the end of their life. So we really do need to replace them. We've put out a request for proposal to certified manufacturers, and we've gotten some responses, and those will be evaluated by the team, and you'll be hearing from us in a couple of weeks about how much money we actually need.
I understand. You're listening to the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. I'm honored today to have Linda Phillips, who's the Shelby County Administrator of Elections, with us. The machines that we currently have, Linda, were they purchased back in 2006, the ones that we currently use, or when was that?
Yes, I believe it was 2006.
So we're literally using an electronic device that is 14 years old.
Yeah, I don't think very many of you have the phones that you were using in 2006.
Well, that was my point the other day when you and I were talking about things, and I thought about what would a cell phone have looked like 14 years ago, or...
They were kind of brick-like. I had one.
Yeah, they were pretty big. Or can you even imagine a computer that is 14 years old now?
No.
But that's really where we are with our elections. So my understanding is the persons that will ultimately decide what machines we use are our... Share with me. It's your board
it's
of
the Shelby County Election Commission, which is a board appointed by the State Election Commission with input from the Shelby County representatives and senators. Those 5 people will make the decision about which system we will use. Now, it's not that they have a whole lot of choices. Under Tennessee law, we have to use equipment that has been certified by the Federal Election Commission and has been certified in the state of Tennessee, which really does not give us a whole lot of choices.
Right. Well, we're going to be right back. This is a great conversation today. We've got a number of elections coming up, but we're talking with Linda Phillips, who's the Administrator of Elections here in Shelby County. She's very well experienced and ready for these upcoming elections. So we'll be right back on the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hey, I'm Williams Brack, co-host of Grind Set. The insight you gain from us and our guests will motivate you to take the leap into entrepreneurship. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Grind Set on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
And we're back on the Chairman's Perspective. I'm really honored today to have Linda Phillips, Administrator of Elections, with us. You have a lot of work upcoming, Linda. I hope you've been resting up. We've got the presidential preference primary and county primaries coming up in March of 2020.
Yeah, March 3rd.
March 3rd.
Early voting starts February 12th.
So by the time this show airs, it'll be too late to register for that election. But I know you get a lot of questions asked many times when someone's coming in for our primary, why they have to pick a party. Can you go through some of those commonly asked questions that I know you get all the time?
Okay, well, that is definitely one of the questions. The election in March is a primary election, and the purpose of a primary is for the political parties to select their candidates. So that's the reason that you have to pick a party. You can either pick the Republican or the Democratic ballot. And that choice is not binding. You pick the one that you believe you share their ideals with, but you don't have to vote for those people in the general election, and you can change your mind about your party in the next election.
Okay. Let me ask you this. I know it's exciting for young people. I've been out at the polls before, and it's really exciting to see that 18-year-old coming to the polls. They may have just graduated from high school, or they're coming back from college for the first time. They've got such excitement about voting for the first time. And then also, I've met World War II veterans that literally will get out of the car, get in a wheelchair, get in a walker. They will not miss the opportunity to vote. But for the great populace in Shelby County, we have so many people that do not choose to vote. How do we turn that around? And the challenges we have with voter participation in Shelby County, is the rest of the country experiencing the same dynamic?
Yeah, it is. It is a problem. Voter participation has been declining since the 60s. Now, part of that problem is mythical, because when we passed the Motor Voter Act, which did not allow states to purge voters from the rolls started growing. So right now we have 575,000 registered voters in Shelby County, but I suspect if we sent a piece of mail to all of them, we'd get about 100,000 back.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah,
So there may be, let me ask you this, so there may be people on our rolls that are deceased, or those have been removed?
No, we actually do a pretty good job of removing deceased voters. We get reports from the Social Security Master Death Index, and we do remove people who have died. Now, one of the issues that we have is we have some 117 and 118-year-olds on our voter registration rolls. They probably are no longer with us, but because we don't have Social Security numbers on registrations that old, we can't know for sure.
Why do you think the voter apathy? What do you think the complaints are? What do you hear? You're really an expert in the field of voting, but why the apathy?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. People tend to come out and vote when they are interested in a candidate or they think their vote will make a difference. Now, if there's some really interesting research, though, that talks about having younger voters vote, how to get them to vote.
Sure.
Because they are, the 18 to 30 age range is our lowest participating group. But one of the things that researchers have found is if you get voters, young voters, particularly in high school, and you show them how to vote as part of a class, and then if they vote in their first election that they are eligible, statistically, they are vastly more likely to become lifelong voters.
Boy.
So that education thing is key.
You're listening to the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. We're with Linda Phillips, who's our Administrator of Elections. I think that's fascinating. I think I need to do my homework when SCS is in front of me, Shelby County Schools, and to see, do you know right now inside our public schools, do we discuss? When I was in school here in Memphis, we actually had to take Tennessee history. I don't know if that's even required anymore, but do you have any knowledge if we're doing that with the younger people?
We are in some schools. We just finished a program at Central High School that was organized by a parent, and every class, every senior class that every senior had to take, they came into the library and we talked about voting, and we got them registered to vote. We do contact every single high school, both public and private, in Shelby County in the spring and offer to come out and register their students.
Oh, that's great. And
that's important because a student needs to register in person so that they can get an absentee ballot if they go away to college. Under federal law, if you don't register in person, if you register by mail or you register on our online registration, then you have to vote in person your first time.
Okay.
So, but if we go out to you and we register you and we see, yes, you are a real person, then you can vote absentee from college or from your job or the military or wherever you might be. That's
really good to know. Let me ask you about, we have so many, especially in my district, we have a number of nursing homes and assisted living facilities. How does it work for someone who's retired living in a nursing home or an assisted living facility? How do they have the opportunity to vote?
Well, we actually send bipartisan teams to all of the licensed nursing homes in Shelby County. Now, that's not to be confused with independent living. People who are living in elderly housing who are independent, they still need to vote early or go to their precinct polling place. But if you're in a licensed bed in a nursing home, we'll come to you.
And do you bring the machines currently to those nursing homes? How does that work?
Well, we bring the team and we bring paper ballots for them. We found that bringing the machines is a difficult thing for people in a wheelchair to manage. They're just more comfortable with paper ballots.
Gotcha. Well, that's really good to know. I know we haven't, again, I think our seniors are very vested in voting. So many people who served in the military have fought for the right to vote.
Right.
And that's really, really good information. So on the horizon, there's been a lot of community conversation coming up. We've got a short segment this time, but we're going to talk about the future of where we go in terms of the investment into our voting machines. The machines that we currently have, are those machines the same ones that are throughout the country, or are there new opportunities that we're not aware of?
Well, there are certainly different kinds of machines. The state of Georgia, who use the same machines we have, has just replaced theirs.
Oh, okay.
With a ballot marking system from Dominion Voting Systems. Dominion is a certified vendor in Tennessee, and they did respond. We also got responses from ES&S, who has a variety of different systems we can look at, and Hart InterCivic. So those are the three vendors that responded to our RFP.
Okay. So there are not really 50, 60 voting companies out there that you have a choice from.
No.
It doesn't sound like...
No, there's really only about 6 nationwide, and many of them have segmented their business. So there's some that really work mostly in California and the West Coast. Some that work mostly on the East Coast.
So we've made great strides from the early 1900s when we were filling out a paper ballot and literally tabulating those for 40 hours or so.
Yes, we definitely have made improvements.
Okay. We're going to talk about those improvements in just a few minutes. You're listening to the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Funking up your airwaves and jamming the good information in your ear. Once again, it's Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics. KUDZUKIAN.
We are back on the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. I'm really honored to have our friend with us today, Linda Phillips, who is the Administrator of Elections in Shelby County. We've been talking about the upcoming elections. One thing I've always wondered about is early voting. It seems to be really the deciding factor in many local elections. So many people tend to come out for early voting. Tell us a little bit, early voting, there's plenty of opportunities in Shelby County to vote. It's a little over 2 weeks. How long does early voting last?
Well, early voting for the presidential preference primary starts on February the 12th, and it ends on the 25th, which is 2 days shorter than a typical early voting period because it's a presidential preference primary. What we find is that even in a regular election, about 60% of our voters will vote early.
Wow.
But in a presidential preference primary, that drops to about 30%, because an awful lot of people wait until Election Day to see who else drops out of the race.
So on this upcoming, let me ask you this, Linda, on this upcoming presidential, so there's a chance that on the ballot, when they see all the nominees for president in the primary, there's a chance that someone may have dropped out that's still on the ballot.
That's right, yeah. The list of presidential candidates was set in early December.
Wow.
And since then, I know of at least 3 that have dropped out, and there may be more. I've been a little busy, so I haven't really followed that.
But y'all have to work so far ahead that actually the ballot will have people, again, that are running for president that have dropped out.
That have dropped out, yeah. Yeah, we have to, by law, mail military ballots 45 days prior to the election.
Wow.
So because many of our military are scattered across the world, and it takes time for them to get to them and then for them to get it back to us.
Well, having 2 full weeks to early vote, there's really no reason not to vote. Do you think early voting is too long?
Well, it can be. I think early voting has a tendency, because it is such a long period, that the better financed candidates have a better shot. which, I guess would be true even if we didn't have early voting.
Sure.
But it's harder for an unknown to staff, have people doing their push cards at all of the early voting locations, because there are 25 of them.
So on election day, it's typically 7 in the morning till 7 at night?
Yes, we'll start at 7 a.m. and the voting will end at 7 p.m. Anybody in line at 7 is allowed to vote, no matter how long it takes. So, if there's 500 people in line at 7 o'clock, we're going to get them all voted.
So as long as you're in line by 7 a.m.
7 p.m.
Excuse me. Yes, as long as you're in line at 7 p.m., you're guaranteed the opportunity to vote.
Absolutely.
It's been a while. I remember a presidential race or two back when we actually had people still standing in line at 7, but for the most part, it's a fairly quick and easy process.
It is quick, and it's a short ballot, so it really, there's really only 2 races on the Democratic ballot: the president and the General Sessions Court clerk. So that parties can nominate their candidates. The Republican ballot has those 2 races, and then the Republican Party in Tennessee elects their delegates to the National Convention.
Oh, that's right.
The Democratic Party selects their delegates in another manner.
But again, a pretty short ballot.
It's a pretty short ballot, yeah. It's really only, from the time you check in and walk up to a machine, it's about a minute.
So it's going to take you longer to...
It's going to take you longer to check in and park your car.
Right. Again, we're so happy today to be updated on the upcoming elections with our Administrator of Elections in Shelby County, Linda Phillips. Linda, can you remind everyone... we've talked a lot about the primary and the county primary, but then in August... We're back. You're back at it again with the county general and the state and federal primary, correct?
That's correct.
That'll be August. So who will be on that ballot in August?
That ballot, there will be the primary election for one of the Tennessee United States senators.
Okay.
All of the Tennessee United States congressmen, House of Representatives. The Tennessee senators who are in the even districts, and all of the Tennessee representatives in the House. Oh. So, and you can start picking up petitions for those on Monday, February 3rd.
Wow. And then we've got the general election November 3rd. That'll be the big presidential, yes, November 3rd.
That'll be the presidential.
Any inside baseball relative to what you think turnout will be for this presidential? I know you deal with experts in your field every day. Anything you're going to be surprised at? Or
I don't think so. We're planning for a very high turnout in November. We'll be, assuming that you all fund it, we will be having expanded early voting hours. Instead of starting at 11, we'll start at 9.
Okay.
Just make sure that everybody can vote early. And typically 60% of people will vote early in that November election.
So let me ask you this. No matter what voting machines or process that the election board decides, will that be hopefully available by November 3rd? I
hope so. I certainly do, because I would really think voter confidence would be greatly improved, because whatever system we purchase, it is going to have a paper backup.
Right.
So,
and I know if people want to learn just about the options, is it the best place to go is to go to your website?
Well, actually, if they want to see demonstrations from the certified systems in Tennessee, if they go to the Tennessee Secretary of State's website, there are videos posted from the certified manufacturers that show the systems that are available.
Okay, so that's on Secretary Hargett's website. Okay, yeah. Well, he's a great friend of ours here in Shelby County, so we'll drive some people to go to Secretary Hargett's website in Nashville. Any closing thoughts about voting? And I thought it was really interesting in your bio. You have stated before that you believe voting is the most important thing anyone can do because it's their most fundamental right as Americans to vote.
Absolutely.
Tell me just a little bit more about that. Why do you believe so strongly in that?
Well, I guess I was raised in families that voting was extremely important, because both of my grandmothers remember very vividly when women got the right to vote.
Absolutely.
And so, they fought hard for that right. And, back, when I was little and it would be election day, they got dressed up. They put on hats and gloves and dressed like they were going to church, and because voting was that important to them. And so that's the family I was raised in. My grandfather firmly believed that if you didn't vote, you couldn't complain.
Well, it's really true. We have a lot of really good elected officials in Shelby County, but, from time to time we might get sideways with an elected official. But, if you don't go and vote, you get what you vote or don't vote for.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't vote, I mean, you're really letting somebody else make that choice. And the other really thing about voting that I think is so important is everybody is equal.
Boy, what a great comment.
Your vote counts just the same as anybody else's. It doesn't matter where you went to school, how much money you make.
Right.
Your vote is equal to everybody else's.
Boy, we really need to remind everybody of that. I just want to thank everybody at the Election Commission for all the work you're about to do, all the work you do in Shelby County. Again, Linda, thanks for all you're doing. We've been talking with Linda Phillips today, Administrator of Elections for Shelby County. Please come back on the show and have us again. I want to hear about the results of our last campaign and what we can learn from.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Linda.
you.
We'll be right back on the KUDZUKIAN Network on the Chairman's Perspective.
20 with Tanya, presented by the Commercial Appeal.
20 minutes of the challenges and opportunities, we face in Memphis, but also a lot of the things nationally that concern me and that should concern other people as well.
20 with Tanya.
On the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Thank you for listening to the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Today it was a privilege, and we learned a lot from Linda Phillips, Administrator of Elections in Shelby County. We want to remind you that we've got 3 different elections in 2020 in Shelby County, March 3rd, August 6th, and November the 3rd. So get out to vote. You'll be regretful if you don't. Again, this has been the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Please listen to the KUDZUKIAN Network and the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN app or your favorite podcast provider. To all of our employees in Shelby County, thanks for your hard work, and we'll see you next time on the Chairman's Perspective.
The Chairman's Perspective Podcast. Executive producer, Shelby County Commission's Chairman, Mark Billingsley. Directed, produced, recorded, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.